submitted this year. So that's a nice achievement for the district. Roman numeral pages 12 through 14, that's the independent auditor's report, and that's really our addition to the financial statements of the district as of June 30th, 2020. It goes on to talk about the responsibilities of management and the auditor. As far as management's responsibilities, management is responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of the statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. This includes the design and the implementation of internal controls related to the preparation and the presentation of the statements that are free from material misstatement. As far as our responsibility as auditors, our responsibility is to express opinions on the statements based on our audit. And we conducted our audit in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards. And this requires that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the statements are free from material misstatement. And this involves performing procedures to obtain audit evidence about amounts and disclosures in the statements. And the procedures selected depend on our judgment and our assessment of risks. During this process, we consider internal controls relevant to statement preparation in our assessments. And that's so that we can design appropriate procedures, but not to express an opinion on the effectiveness of controls. Also during this process, we evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies, estimates, as well as the overall presentation of the statements. On pages Roman numeral 13 is where our opinion is stated. And it says that, in our opinion, the financial statements of the district are presented fairly in all material respects at June 30th, 2020, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The report goes on to talk about some required supplementary information as well as some other information and some prior year comparison information included in the report. Finally, the report also mentions a required report on internal controls over financial reporting and our tests of compliance. And the report describes the scope of our testing and the results, but does not provide an opinion on the effectiveness of controls. I'm going to go ahead and move on now to the management's discussion and analysis, which begins on page Roman numeral 15. The MD&A, as it's called, is unaudited, but it's a very good summary of the year. It explains some of the important information included in the statements. On page Roman numeral 18, you'll see a chart that gives a summary of assets, liabilities, and deferred amounts of the district for the current and the prior year. As you can see, total assets are relatively consistent with the prior year. Liabilities are down $5.3 million this year. And net position for the year is up $1.7 million from last year. Page Roman numeral 19 shows a table with some details about that increase in net position. As you can see, operating grants and contributions are showing an increase this year. And most of that increased revenue is basically from an increase in the state's contribution for its share of pension costs. You'll also see that expenses were up $2.2 million this year, primarily in the instructional area, which accounts for about 70% of the district's expenses. And again, $1.9 million of that increase, again, relates to those state contributions for pensions. So basically, the state is making a contribution for a share of the pension cost of the district. And I wanted to mention that the district does not have control of those amounts year to year. On page Roman numeral 20, there's a discussion of the fund balances of the district. And at June 30th, 2020, the district has $38.5 million in fund balance. This is an increase of about $667,000 from last year. The district had $3.2 million of restricted fund balance and about $5.6 million of fund balance assigned for certain purposes. And at June 30th, the unassigned fund balance of the general fund was $29.2 million. And the general fund is the primary operating fund of the district, and the unassigned fund balance can be used for the ongoing operations of the district. Page Roman numeral 21 discusses some of the difference in the general fund between actual amounts and what was budgeted. And you'll see there that excluding those on-behalf pension contributions from the state, actual revenues were about $285,000 higher than was budgeted. And again, excluding those on-behalf amounts, Actual expenditures were about 1.4 million less than was anticipated for the year. And part of that decrease is related to the switch to remote learning that had an impact on that amount. Page Roman numeral 21 discusses the capital assets and the long-term debt of the district. You can see long-term liabilities were about $48.8 million at June 30th. And that's a decrease of $4.2 million from last year. And that decrease is primarily related to bond payments made in accordance with payment schedules and a decrease in the pension liability. Page Roman numeral 22 also has some discussion of what is anticipated in the district for the coming year, so that's some good information to review. Now, the actual statements themselves follow the MD&A that I just went over, but the MD&A gives a good description of those statements. So I'm going to go ahead and move to page 14, which is where the footnotes start. And that gives some required information, some good supplementary information about the statements. And if you flip to page 24, there are some footnotes that I wanted to specifically point out. Page 24, we can see that the district's deposits of $10.6 million were fully insured or collateralized at June 30th, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Page 26 gives some information about the capital assets of the district. The MD&A gave a summary table, but this has some more detailed information about the assets of the district, the increases and decreases for the year. Page 29 shows a table of long-term liabilities. I mentioned the liabilities in total, but this gives some detail about what those liabilities are. We can see that the district has bonds payable and premiums of about $22.7 million, about $3.3 million of pension liabilities, and about $22.8 of other post-employment benefit liabilities. On page 31, there's a table of fund balances at June 30th of 2020. And again, as I mentioned previously, the district has $38.5 million in total of fund balance. And again, $3.2 million of that is restricted for certain purposes, the largest amount being debt service. There's about $5.6 million assigned for certain purposes, primarily transportation and capital projects. And again, $29.2 million is unassigned and available for operations. The rest of the notes are devoted primarily to the TRS, IMRF, and post-employment benefit disclosures that are required to be presented, the statewide pension and OPEB disclosures. So I'm going to go ahead and move to page 53. Pages 53 to 62 provide some more detailed information regarding those pension and post-employment benefits that I mentioned. And the other thing I wanted to mention here is that all required payments that have been required of the district for TRS, IMRF, and the statewide post-employment benefits plan, all those payments that have been required have been made. The liabilities that you see there are more allocated on a statewide level and allocated to the district. So I thought that was important to mention as well. The next section of the statements are more detailed schedules of information that I've already talked about, but it's some good information for you to take a look at. There are some comparisons with the actual current year compared with prior year amounts and with the budget, and that's presented for each fund. The next area I wanted to talk about was the statistical section, which begins on page 110 and ends at 136. And just in general, this area, this section is required to be presented if you plan to apply for those awards. So this is a required section, and part of the reason that those awards were granted. So this section gives some good 10-year trend information regarding the district. It also gives some other information about the district as far as revenues, demographics, and some other operating information. So it's kind of a good summary and a good snapshot, and again, over the last 10 years of how the things are trending in the district. So some good reading there as well. And the last section of the report is the single audit, which begins on page 137. And basically what this is a required audit. When you have a certain level of federal funds that you're expending, there's another audit that goes along with that. So this is the result of those procedures. And again, that includes that internal control letter that I mentioned earlier on. So that's where that is contained. So that's basically the financial statements. There's another letter that we issued in addition to the statements, but before I go to that, I wanted to find out if there were any questions about the statements.
No, we're all good.
Okay. So the next item I wanted to talk about is the conclusion letter that was issued with the statements. And basically what this is a summary of the significant audit matters that we wanted to point out to the board and to management. So I'll just go through a couple items here very quickly. We wanted to mention that the financial statement disclosures, the footnotes, we felt were neutral, consistent, and clear. We encountered no difficulties in dealing with management and performing and completing our audit. The copy of the letter that you have has a listing of all the journal entries that were posted as part of the audit, and those entries were agreed to by management and were posted by the district as well. And finally, pleased to report there were no disagreements that arose during the course of the audit, so I wanted to make sure we mentioned that as well. As Ed said, the audit went well. We wanted to thank Jeff and his staff for having everything available to us in a timely and organized manner. I wanted to make sure we said thank you for that. So are there any questions about that letter?
No.
Okay. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Very much. Okay, next up is the superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. First item is, just want to let those that are listening at home know that we're aware that our simulcast this evening, thanks gentlemen, our simulcast this evening is audio only. We're having some technical difficulties. We are recording it, so later presentations of tonight's event will be video and audio. But those of you that are listening along at home and hearing us but not seeing us, that is correct, as we're having some technical difficulties. The first item of the superintendent's report is just a statement about the superintendent's goals report, which was sent to board members last week. Typically, we do a trimester report on the board's goals. And as you know, the landscape of how we do things in schools is quite a bit different due to COVID. So as a result, we've carried on with goal number 2, which is a communication goal, partnership with families goal. And those efforts were outlined in the report, as well as a summary of the challenges that we've faced and the strategies we've used to overcome them, both by building and also at the district level by department. So I just wanted to recognize that report and entertain any comments or questions from the board. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Kelly to just give a brief update on access testing.
Yes, access testing is something, for those of you that are unaware, it's a required assessment that we complete with all of our students that qualify for ESL or bilingual services. It is an assessment that's done annually to determine eligibility or continued eligibility for that type of programming. We are set to start that assessment when we return from winter break. Unfortunately, the requirement to complete that assessment in person has not been waived. So our district, along with all other districts in the state of Illinois, are faced with the challenge of how to schedule and bring in students that are fully remote to do this assessment with them. They have extended the deadline to complete the assessment. I do believe we have until the end of February to do it, which is a little bit longer of a window. But it is going to present us some challenge as we have to bring students in We can't just do it in one administration. It will take at least 2, if not 3 administrations with students, and it is something that particularly with our younger students, has to be done in a one-to-one setting. Our older students, we can sometimes put together to complete, but there are portions of it with the younger students that have to be done one-to-one. So our teams are working hard to thoughtfully schedule those in each of the buildings. We will be reaching out to families and seeing what works for them, whether it's after school hours or even in some cases possibly on a Saturday. But we are working as a team to figure that out. I'm not totally, I am somewhat hopeful that maybe it will be waived still. I know there's a large group of people that are advocating for that to be waived at the state level and the federal level. However, as of right now, we have still been told by ISB that it is a requirement to complete it with all students.
Thank you, Kelly. And some unusualities, is that a word? I'm going to take that liberty, with our E-rate cycle this year, so I'd like Vern to explain that to the board.
Yeah, I wanted to let the board know that the federal government has renewed the new 5-year cycle for the Category 2 monies, which is good news for us. As you know, with Category 1, that usually covers your network services for like internet or wide area network. And so that money is always based on your free and reduced numbers. And so the percentage off is based on that. Category 2, districts like us used to not get that money because it usually went to the highest need districts. But they've changed that to where now it's all based on student population. And so there's about $375,000 that are earmarked towards our district, and then we match part of that, and then they do a discount on it. So we'll be able to use that new money for improving our wireless network. And we have a 5-year window starting next July 1, but we'll do a lot of it on the front end here with getting that ready.
Good news, thanks, Vern. Just a reminder to the community that students will return from winter break on Monday, January 11th. As scheduled, that date hasn't changed. Staff is to return the Friday before, that's Friday, January 8th, for a school improvement day. That day is going to be offered virtually, and staff is going to be encouraged to stay home and engage in those activities from their home. So just some questions in the community about what surrounding districts are doing and what we intend to do. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that we intend to return to our current programming, whether it be hybrid or full remote, on Monday, January 11th, as scheduled in our district calendar. I'd like to continue with celebrations. Congratulations to Lizzie Strom and her husband on the birth of their son, Leo. Leo was born on Wednesday, November 25th. Weighed 6 pounds, 15 ounces, and was 20.5 inches long. Lizzie's an LBS at Memorial. And congratulations to Tom Gilman and his wife, the birth of their new baby girl, Magnolia May. Born on the 27th of November, she weighed 4 pounds, 12 ounces, and was 18 inches long. Tom is the music teacher at FIRC. And I'd like to share one condolence with the board. Barb Haney and Teresa Wick's mother passed away. Barb is a parapro at FIRC, and Teresa is a parapro at Fulton. And we extend our deepest sympathy to Barb and Teresa's family in this difficult time. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Okay, next up is public comment. Is there anybody that would like to address the board? Okay, hearing none. Next up would be union report.
Good evening.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. This evening, once again, I stand before this board to address you regarding the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Since the last time this board met, which was just 1 month ago, the average number of COVID cases per day in the United States has risen from nearly 110,000 to over 210,000 daily cases. The death toll in America has increased by 100,000, bringing this horrific total of lives lost to 300,000. Each day in our nation, we are averaging over 3,000 deaths per day. Tonight, I would like to share with you 5 measures that the IFT, along with the IEA, are asking lawmakers to work on to keep schools and communities safe. It is important for this board to hear these things so we can work together to continue to keep our teachers and students in District 146 safe. Number 1, establish clear metrics so districts know when to switch to remote learning to keep students and staff safe. Since the last board meeting, at the request of the teachers, District 146 has set up a dashboard with basic metrics on it. Teachers are thankful for the effort, yet we would like to see more data on the dashboard to alleviate misconceptions that the data may show, both to staff and to our community. I highly encourage this board to review the dashboards that are in place by our neighboring districts, Orland 135 and Tinley 140, so you can personally see what we are talking about when we say that the metrics and data reported on the 146 dashboard can often be misleading. In particular, we would like this board to revisit the wording under the close contact section of the District 146 dashboard that states, and I quote, "The number of new reported cases each week of staff and students identified as having close contact while on District 146 grounds to an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19. And compare that language to the language on 140's website defining close contact as, and I quote, "Students quarantined either due to a positive diagnosis or close contact exposure both inside and outside of school that have self-reported to the district, including students who are learning remotely." By only reporting close contacts that have allegedly occurred in our 146 buildings is highly misleading and needs to be revisited. Case in hand today, the 146 dashboard was updated this morning, showing 0 COVID cases and 0 close contacts last week. Are you telling me that in a district with 2,300 students and over 350 staff, that not 1 case of COVID or 1 single close contact occurred last week? That's what the dashboard was telling us this morning. How can this possibly be? There were multiple staff absences last week and beyond, and there were many students changing from in-person to remote learning last week and beyond, which would signify a COVID case or exposure to COVID, unless students are being allowed to switch back and forth from in-person to remote for other reasons that are unknown to those who are teaching these children. How can this possibly be if, according to the dashboard, there were 0 COVID cases and 0 close contacts last week? We also feel that this board should establish some sort of metric to decide when it may be necessary to switch to remote learning. We have seen districts all over the state go on adaptive pauses when local COVID data supports a rising metric. Even all co-op programs, even all co-op programs that work within District 146 and all itinerant teachers employed by District 146 have called for an adaptive pause due to the current metrics and positivity rate. The CDC has stated over and over again that even though the vaccine is beginning to roll out, the next 3 to 4 months are going to be our darkest days ever with this virus. We are asking that the board have some sort of preempted plan in place should that decision to pause come to be. We cannot wait and do it last minute. There must be a threshold decided upon in which it is deemed unsafe to be in school. Number 2, and they're not all that long, sorry. Number 2, the IFT and the IEA are asking that districts enforce guidance and requirements put forth by the IDPH and ISB and heed the recommendations of the CDC. While we believe District 146 has a strong plan in place, we ask that each administrator remain in lockstep with each other and that these guidelines continue to be enforced consistently and equitably between buildings. Teachers have asked clarifying questions, and sometimes it appears that the goalposts are moved daily. Depending on what building a teacher works in, it is unclear as to what protocols are in place and how they are being enforced. It is of utmost importance that each and every safety measure put in place be followed to the letter in each building. There can be no exceptions because we are dealing with the health and safety of our teachers and our students. There needs to be a continued open line of communication from the top down and from the bottom up to ensure the safety of all. Every effort needs to be made so that teachers feel safe coming to school and that students who are ill remain at home for the entire length of their quarantine, and that the quarantine guidelines are implemented with no exceptions. Third, the IFT and the IEA are asking that rapid COVID-19 testing be implemented in schools so that infected students and staff can be identified before they spread the virus. I know this is more of a governmental ask, but I wanted you to be aware that this is one of the measures that teachers' unions are asking for to ensure safety in schools. Fourth, urge the prioritization of education workers in the vaccine schedule. We all know healthcare workers, nursing home residents, and the elderly take priority when it comes to the vaccine. But when it comes to frontline workers, teachers are the frontline workers and need to be high up on the vaccination list. And fifth, if the Federal CARES Act isn't renewed, the state needs to step in so education workers are not forced to work while ill. Again, this is a measure geared more towards the government. However, if the CARES Act is not renewed, the union will need to work together with the board to develop some sort of MOU to ensure that teachers who become sick are protected. Finally, the teachers of this district are working harder than they ever had in their careers. Some sadly have reached their breaking points. It is truly difficult to witness. Teachers at CMS are teaching 8 classes per day. Teachers in all buildings are dealing with students being switched from in-person to remote and back again over and over, causing complete disruption to the learning process. We have students not showing up to remote learning for extended periods of time, or not at all, and teachers are struggling with how to reach them and how to give them passing grades. We have students slipping through the cracks because there are no Tier 2 interventions taking place due to limited time and limited specialist schedules. The burden weighs heavy on our teachers, and they take every bit of this to heart. Thank you. They take it home with them. It keeps them up at night. It keeps them coming back to school every day, hoping that today might be different. We need you to know this. As this pandemic drags on into its darkest days yet, you need to know the toll that it is taking on teachers, and we ask for your help. Let's give teachers and community members a COVID dashboard that reports the reality of the disease and how it is impacting our district. Let's make sure that the plan to keep everyone safe continues to be adhered to by the strictest of measures with no exceptions. Let's continue to keep staff informed and up to date on district COVID policies and changes to the policies. Let's develop a metric that would create an adaptive pause that would not only protect our staff and students, but would also help protect our local doctors and nurses and help keep our hospitals from being overwhelmed. We are getting close. We can see the light at the end of a very long tunnel. The vaccine has arrived. Our turn will come. But until then, please understand that we are not in a good place. The pandemic is raging everywhere, and now more than ever, our voices need to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, next up is our action items. Can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move that we adopt item 7.1, approval of minutes, 7.2, approval of closed session minutes, 7.3, approval of destruction of closed session tapes, 7.4, approval of financial items, and 7.5, approval of personnel items.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, Secretary, call the roll.
Barry, yes. Casper?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Nenza?
Yes.
Malloy?
Yes. 7.6, approval of gift to school.
Guess we had kind of an unusual one. Lindsay Lucas, kindergarten teacher at Fierk, applied for an Adopt a Classroom with Burlington Coat Factory, and she won. So they're going to donate $1,200 for her to use purchasing sensory tools, social emotional tools, toys, and various learning supplies. And as you know, your board policy 880 requires the board to ratify any gift that's in an amount greater than $500. So I'm excited to ask you to approve this gift for $1,200 from Burlington Coat Factory to Lindsay Lucas at Fair.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve and accept the donation to Ferrick School in the amount of $1,200.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, Secretary call the roll.
Barry, yes. Casper?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Nenza?
Yes.
Malloy?
Yes. 7.7, approval of resolution authorizing final aggregate tax levy for the year 2020.
All right, so we've got the next three resolutions are all tax levy related. The first one is just the regular, normal tax levy. There's no difference from what we talked about last month. The CPI is 2.3%. That's the limit of the money that we're going to get. We're levying a little more just to make sure we capture the full 2.3%. But this first resolution is just the regular tax levy resolution.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing final aggregate tax levy for the year 2020 by the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 146, Cook County, State of Illinois, as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Secretary call the roll.
Barry, yes. Casper?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Nenza?
Yes.
Malloy?
Yes. 7.8, approval of resolution authorizing reduction of certain fund levies for the 2020 levy year.
This is another standard one that we do every year. Because we levy a little bit more than we know we're going to get, we have to tell the county clerk where to remove the excess, and this year, and in most years, it's the ed fund. So that's what this resolution is.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the reduction of certain fund levies for the 2020 levy year as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, and is there any discussion? Okay, Secretary call the roll.
Barry, yes. Casper?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Nenza?
Yes.
Malloy?
Yes. 7.9, approval of resolution authorizing a supplemental tax levy to pay the principal and the interest on outstanding limited bonds for Community Consolidated District 146, Cook County, Illinois.
All right, and this one is a little bit different than what we normally do every year. This one is just a one-time thing for this year. We talked about it last month also, or last week even. When we did the 2018 bonds, we were above our debt service limit, and we were using accumulated fund balance to pay the extra. In the past 2 years, the debt service limit has gone up just a little bit, and so we need to capture that because we've used up all the fund balance. This is called a supplemental levy to capture the remaining $58,000. Our bond levy will still be less than it was last year. The payments are starting to ramp down, but in order to capture this, we have to do this supplemental levy one time just this year.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing a supplemental tax levy to pay the principal of and interest on outstanding limited bonds of Community Consolidated School District Number 146, Cook County, Illinois, as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Secretary call the roll.
Barry, yes. Casper?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Nenza?
Yes.
Malloy?
Yes. Next up is our information items. 8.1, revised policies, first read.
Yes, so it's my pleasure to bring you this latest batch of policy recommendations from our press service. There's not a lot of interesting new language in the packet. Most of the revisions are in the footnotes only. I will say that there are 11 of the policies that are being recommended are related to COVID. As you know, typically policy drives procedures. In a pandemic, sometimes the opposite is true. The administration has been reacting to IDPH and ISB's changing guidance all of the time. Well, now it's time for the General Assembly and then boards to catch up. So a lot of the information is policies that now get the board up to date with regard to our behaviors during a pandemic, and the policies are all consistent with our applications and have been all along. The other 6 policies are on various items, and they're just typical regulatory updates. And most of, like I said, most of the revisions are in the footnotes only. The footnotes don't make their way into the policy manual, but they do support the language in the policy manual in that it references case law, other examples of policy and practice, and it basically gives a little broader picture and rationale for the choice of language in the policy itself. So not a particularly exciting update, but a necessary one.
Thank you. That's it for our information items. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
May Secretary call the roll?
Barry, yes. Casper?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Nenza?
Yes.
Malloy?
Yes, we are adjourned.